Good show.
There
Okay,
you
got it.
go.
We got
Look
it. We
at
got
you.
it. Okay. I don't think they can see me though, Jen.
Oh,
Okay,
I
take it
can
away,
see
Jen.
you, which is the beautiful thing. And I will just start my timer so I stay on track. Tell me when I get to take it away.
I love it. Take it away.
Excellent. So I always laugh because the easiest way to describe what I do is a business storyteller. But really, when I meet someone and they say, "What do you do?" I say, "Well, I find your best stories and I turn them into money," because that's what business story selling is. So your story, your advantage, next slide. That's not just a tagline for me. That's everything. Your story matters in this era of AI and noise and busy. Your story is the most valuable thing that you have. That's your advantage. That's what makes you not sound like everyone else. Like I told GA, I worked with a bunch of accountants, and at the bottom of it all, everyone's doing taxes, auditing, assurance services, advisory. They're all doing the same thing. So what makes them stand out is their services, right? They've got the credentials, they've got everything, or their stories rather. They've got their credentials, they've got their services. For a product-based company, they've got the product. But what people actually buy is the story. So if you go next slide, today I'm going to talk about taking something that everybody already knows, their SWOT model, and turning that into story. Now, the reason why I have this slide is that there's a story that haunts me 7 years later. It haunts me. I was working with my accounting firm, and in 2018, when the Tax Cuts Jobs Act came out, it changed the way people could write off repairs for real estate. And one of our partners took one of the companies we worked with, and they reapplied that new regulation, and they refiled 2 years of tax returns, and they saved them $948,000 with a single moment of a new statute. And I was so excited, right? There's this whole email string, and I'm going, yes, let's do the story. Go ahead and tell me about it. And, so what did they do with the $948,000? How did it change their business? Did they hire people? Did they do that nonprofit they've been thinking about? Tell me everything. And it died in the email string because the partners they couldn't get to it. And they said, oh, well, we can't talk about the name of the company. And I might point out, I haven't talked about the name of the company. You can tell the story and leave all of those confidential details out, because the value of a story, if you tell it, it could be astronomical. You can have it as a testimonial. You can do socials around it. You can change your whole website. You can add it to presentations. That's a story that will give your business legs. A story that's not told makes you exactly $0. And that's usually where I come in. Next slide. So, stories that go untold, there's a cost. And I always wish that people understood the cost of not telling them. You don't have that extra credibility. It closes the door to opportunity. All the people that would read that story and hear you tell it and come to your business and say, I want to see what you can do for my business. I want to hear how you can change my life. And a lot of the time that ends up being dollars. Next slide. So we're going to talk about using your story strategically. It doesn't get more strategic than a SWOT model. And so we're going to talk about using your stories to build trust, to clarify and show your value, to make sure that your brand is aligned internally as well as externally. Because, half of the SWOT model is internal, and half of the SWOT model is how you're affected by the world. Next slide. So what is story selling? And there's a science to storytelling that I think that people miss. I think that they forget that stories they're grounded in neuroscience. I don't know if anyone has ever read Lisa Cron's Wired for Story, but it's magnificent. And it talks about how humans use story to learn and how it all works in the brain. Next slide. So I always say that facts tell and stories sell. So when I'm working with accountants, they want to give you all the facts. They want to tell you, oh, and this percentage of this, and I watch all the clients just tune out. But if you tell them a story, I actually have a slide in here that they found in Stanford University research that people are 22 times as likely to remember a story as a fact. They're going to forget your facts by lunchtime. They're going to remember your stories for years. So that's a big deal. Next slide. Most professionals lead with what they do, right? They don't talk about, they say, here's what I do, but they don't talk about what the results are. And they don't talk about the changes that they make. So story selling is using those authentic business stories that are yours. AI can't duplicate your authentic business stories. They can make up their own, but those aren't authentic. And basically, those are the stories that illustrate your value and move people to take action. Next slide. You want them to feel your expertise instead of just hearing about it. So story selling is going to tell people how it matters. Not I do taxes, but I take all of the regulations that are available to you and I see your business and I see ways to save you money that you could never imagine. And that will allow you to, et cetera, et cetera. People remember the stories that you tell. Next slide. So one of the things that really fascinated me when I found out about how the brain deals with facts versus how the brain deals with stories, right? Facts light up 3 or 4 areas of your brain. They light up your speech area and they light up a few areas that are not connected together. So if you're looking at this picture, I have 2 brains, and the facts brain shows 3 little areas on the left side of the brain, and the stories area lights up all kinds of things. It lights up all kinds of interconnected areas, and it also lights up that lizard brain that deals with survival and emotions and all of it. So you get the frontal cortex and you get the back cortex. So it's actually science. Next slide. So I have the details of this, but really what you want to remember about stories is instead of facts that you have to juggle and remember, stories we experience them. So they're going to make an emotional imprint on our brain. Next slide. And the reason why that matters is that most people don't buy based on facts. Most people buy based on their emotions. So when you take your stories and you touch their emotions, you are flipping your sales model from maybe 5% of people going, oh, you see me, you get me, to 95% of people saying, ooh, that could work for me, because now their emotions are involved. And in fact, the hilarious thing is that you would buy with your emotions and then you put a bunch of facts in there to justify your choice. That's how people go through the buying cycle. Next slide. So it's up to 95% of sales are emotional. But really, the thing that was so interesting to me is when I looked at internal customers as opposed to external customers, your external customers out in the world have those really high numbers, right? Those 80 to 95% range. But when you're selling to internal customers, they're like 60%. They need a lot more facts inside the company than they do outside the company. I was like, ooh, that's fascinating. Next slide. So what stories do for you at the bottom of it all is they differentiate you from your competitors. That's the huge one. They show proof and empathy at the same time because they're interconnecting so many things in your brain. They encourage people to give you that trust and clarity and credibility that we want all of our customers to have. And the second most important thing is that they take abstract ideas and they make them tangible. That's why stories have come up through all of existing. Lisa Cron likes to say that our brains are wired for story because that's how we learn. Like, we have opposable thumbs, but the stories are what tell us what to hang on to. And that's the power of story. Next slide. So just always remember that when you go into a meeting with clients, what do they remember after your meeting? Are they going to remember the data? No, they're going to want you to hand all that over as a presentation, but your story they'll remember. Next slide. So the Stanford study that I talked about, people are 22 times more likely to remember stories versus facts. It's proven, and they've found it over and over and over again. Next slide. Now, one of my favorite stories is actually about Starbucks, and I call it the story that built the brand. Because Starbucks, when they started, Starbucks coffee, tea, and spice was not about actually go ahead and hang out here. They were not about the coffee house that we know and love. And in fact, the only coffee that they brewed were little sample cups to tell you whether you like that Arabica bean or that espresso bean. I mean, Starbucks started in 1971. I mean, that's the year Stairway to Heaven and American Pie came out. So this was forever ago, right? These were foodies, and they lived in the days of Maxwell House and Folgers and weak coffee by today's standards. And they started their company because they couldn't find any of those dark roast beans. They weren't available. And so they jumped in to kind of be the change they wanted to see in the world. So next slide. And they did that for a whole lot of years, right? They were just a small little Seattle coffee roaster. They didn't even have chairs. It was like a walk-in storefront, and they sold beans and grinders and brewing equipment, but they didn't really sell coffee. And so their brand was about the product, but it wasn't about the experience. Well, there was a guy named Howard Schultz who worked for a Swedish homewares company, and he looked, and his biggest customer was ordering all these coffee makers. Starbucks coffee in Seattle, I got to see these guys. Next slide. So he travels out to meet them, and which in itself was amazing. And they only came to his attention because they bought so many coffee makers. And he went out to visit them in 1982, and he ended up working for them as their director of marketing. And then the next year he visited Italy, and everything changed. You know, he got to see Italy's espresso culture. And anyone who's ever been over there, you know, it's latte in the morning, it's latte at 10, it's latte at this time. I mean, they have connection, they have community, they have ritual, there's a whole thing. So that trip changed everything because he realized it wasn't about the coffee. It was about connection. He wanted to be that third place between home and the office. And really, my favorite quote of his is he said, "We're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people business serving coffee." So finally, Starbucks got chairs and they flipped their whole business model. Next slide. And the transformation was amazing, right? He used the power of story. Starbucks was built on a story. They moved from being a commodity of coffee beans to being a community that people could be in, right? Their brand came from we sell coffee to we create belonging. We are the third place, and you can have meetings here, and you can live your life here, and you can use our Wi-Fi, and we're your other place. Next slide. The results of the transformation were amazing, right? So Starbucks had 11 stores in 1987. And this guy comes in, and within, under another 10 years, they've got tens of thousands of stores and locations worldwide. They went from being just regional to being national to being international. So they didn't scale because of a product. They scaled because of a story. And that's really the lesson here, is that a clear, compelling story will always scale faster than a clear product. As GA would say, coffee beans are not sexy, but the experience of drinking your coffee with friends and community and business partners, that's sexy. Next slide. So your story, the takeaway that I always have when I talk to people about story is that your story doesn't have to be global to be powerful. You don't have to be Starbucks. I mean, none of us are Starbucks, and it's freaky to think that that was more than 50 years ago. 50 years ago? Yeah. When they started, you just have to have a story that is true, that is human, and that is repeatable. So I'm going to talk about how to use your story in the SWOT model. Next slide. So most people use the SWOT to capture all the things we know, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And the internal factors that I talked about are your strengths and weaknesses. That's what we control. And the other side, the opportunities and threats, that's the external factors, what the market controls. We are not in charge of that. Next slide. But if you think about it and you turn the SWOT into a story selling framework, you use the quadrants different. Your strength stories are proof stories, right? They show your best work in action. Your weaknesses, those are your redemption stories. They turn your honesty and your growth into connection for your clients. And you can do these for internal or external clients. We'll talk about that later. Your opportunities are vision stories. What is your direction? And your threats are resilience stories. Like, how have you overcome adversity? So basically, every quadrant holds a story. Every story builds your brand. And this kind of framework turns SWOT from a static analysis that's very dry. It's very full of facts a lot of the time. And, no insult to people who love fact-based SWOTs, but I believe you need to have both. Next slide. So SWOT plus storytelling is perfect because you're analytical and you're emotional, right? SWOT becomes not just data, SWOT becomes a narrative. And every single quadrant tells a story about your business. So your story selling SWOT will have proof, redemption, vision, resilience instead of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Next slide. So if you look at them side by side, think about the words, right? Weaknesses, redemption. Those are two different words that they do the same thing in many ways in the SWOT model, but one shows how you overcame it. And one is just, we're weak. So there's a big difference when you look at them side by side. And I would argue that even if people do those traditional SWOTs, you should also have a story selling SWOT next to it. You should do that as an exercise side by side. Next slide.
Why?
So why a story selling SWOT works. And I hear somebody, just to let you guys know. Basically, a storytelling SWOT is going to replace all those vague strengths, right? We're client focused. And instead, they are going to show you how they're strong. They're going to give you a proof story saying, we as a firm took a new tax statute and reapplied it to our customer and saved them $948,000. That's specific. And that's showing you and your firm, you and your company in a very, very positive light. If you reframe those weaknesses into growth stories, now you're building credibility. They're going to relate to you. Like, oh yeah, we used to do this, and then we did this to shore up that weakness. So it's a nice thing to do those redemption stories, and we're going to talk about those because redemption stories are actually your most powerful stories. And if you talk about your vision, they know where you're going, and you can use that quadrant to spotlight your innovation, your leadership. And so you are basically creating opportunities with the way you fill in that quadrant. And then when you talk about threats, think about the pandemic, right? I don't know who you all were working for during the pandemic, but I was working for an accounting firm. And so COVID and lockdown was a threat. And instead of saying what we couldn't do, we said, well, because of the COVID lockdown, we were already working remotely, but we ramped it up with this and this. So the customers were only out of communication with us for one day. That's how you turn it around with using story selling. Next slide. So what matters is how you put your stories in. And I gave, for anyone who is watching, this is a good slide to screenshot because it talks about what strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, what do those become? What kind of story could you fill in then? And what is it called? Because for people who are not natural storytellers, ChatGPT can help. You can go in there and you can say, I am this kind of business. Show me a proof story for a business like mine. In fact, show me 5. And you can see if any of those resonate for you and your team. And you can help create your new story selling SWOT quadrant with a proof story in that strengths box. Next slide. And these are examples because I wanted, again, this is another one to screenshot. And for all of you that cannot see the table, this is story selling SWOT and examples and prompts. And under a proofs strength story, you would tell real examples of how your firm's expertise delivered measurable results. Again, don't go vague on them, not, oh, we're good at customer service. No, show them your team being their best selves in action. That's what you put here. And even if you dictate that story because you don't feel like you're a natural storyteller, you can dictate that, upload that into a Otter or ChatGPT or one of the tools that Adrienne is doing to turn this into a book. You can get that transcript and you can say, hey, ChatGPT, using my voice, turn this into a story. So you don't have to be a natural storyteller to get the results and the benefit of using story selling. So real quick, so strengths we just did, weaknesses, you share those moments of growth, of learning, of improvement, because all of those humanize your brand, right? That's your moment to be honest and connect with people over what you've learned, right? That's your redemption story. Externally is opportunities and threats. So if opportunities becomes vision, you paint a picture of your firm's future, how you're innovating for your clients. Those are the stories that are going to say, here's where we're going. These are our opportunities, but they're no, they're not dry. They're a story. And then your resilience is for threats. How have you adapted? How have you stayed steady through change? Like what I talked about with the pandemic. Those are the stories that show you overcoming. Next slide. So, we lost slides. That's okay. But
wait, hold on. I'm so sorry.
Uh-oh. That's okay. But I talk a lot about the weakness quadrant because those redemption stories are amazing gold. What matters isn't the mistake. What matters is the story that you tell about the mistake, right? Redemption stories show humility, transparency, change. They are a big deal. And I want to talk to you about this little company called Domino's Pizza, right? This is one of my favorite redemption stories. And basically what a lot of people don't remember is that in the late 2000s, Domino's was in trouble, right? The customers said the pizza tasted like cardboard. The sauce tasted like ketchup. No one believed that the brand cared because you're giving me this awful pizza. And most companies might have tried to spin things or fix it quietly. Not Domino's. They did the opposite. Domino's turned all of those complaints into an entire ad campaign called the Pizza Turnaround. They had executives and employees reading real customer complaints on camera. They made commercials. They brought the cameras into the kitchens. They showed how they were rebuilding the recipes, new dough, new sauce, new approach. And it was the pizza turnaround. All of this was on camera, which back then, right, the internet was just really, really getting rolling. That was huge. They were unfiltered, no excuses. They said, you told us, we listened. They didn't apologize. They just invited the customers into the change process and then invited them to come try us again and decide for themselves, right? So next slide. And the reason why the redemption story worked, it was a massive ad campaign and they told the truth, right? They didn't spin it. They didn't hide it. They were just honest. They owned it, right? You told us, we listened, and then they proved it and invited people to come back and try. And the brand was reborn. Next slide. Within 5 years, their Domino's stock price quadrupled, their sales soared, their trust skyrocketed. They became a global brand. I mean, Domino's really showed how using that vulnerability can be your biggest sales and marketing strength. And so this framework kind of humanizes your SWOT model. And hopefully that's coming across, right? That your SWOT model becomes a living story of who you are, what you've learned, where you're headed. It becomes something that you wouldn't mind giving out to your customers. And in fact, it's a nice thing to add into any annual reports instead of the traditional SWOT model, which we all go into strategy meetings and hide amongst ourselves. So it's a whole different ballgame. Next slide. And, you know, the power of story selling for Domino's and what they did, that turnaround, they turned a weakness into a story of growth, and people didn't just forgive them. They started to root for them, and the pizza turnaround worked. So when you think about the weakness quadrant of your SWOT model, think like dominoes, right? Don't try to hide what's broken. Don't try to quietly fix it. Tell the story of how you fixed it, and your customers will be with you forever, right? Redemption is one of the most powerful stories that any brand could tell. So a final word about SWOT, right? I talked to you about how I was going to discuss internal versus external because they are different, but they are equally important. Next slide. If you are looking at a SWOT model, internal messaging, the focus is different, right? You're focused on your culture, your leadership, your communication, your employee morale, and you need those internal stories. Those internal stories are how you're going to align your brand because customers can feel it, right? Think about what a problem Amazon was having because they're saying, oh, we make it easy to buy. Oh, we have you in mind. And then they're hearing that the drivers feel like they're working in sweatshops. That is not internal alignment. So the story that your team believes determines the story that your clients buy. And I feel that with everything I am. So I would tell all of you, ask your team these 3 questions. Right. And I'll talk about them slow just so you can write them down if you need to, because I don't believe I put them into a slide. Shame on me. But ask your team, what story proves what we do best? Go to them and have them think, what story proves what we do best as a company? What story shows how we've grown as a company? What story shows where we're going next? Because your employees will often know before you do. Now, as an entrepreneurial company, you're asking these questions of yourself, but you are definitely thinking differently for internal message. Like, what is the moment that made you proud to work here? You want to ask that question of every employee you have. And that is very different from your external messaging. So this is another good slide to screenshot because it shows the difference. I think people should do a traditional SWOT and a story selling SWOT. I think they should do an internal SWOT and an external SWOT because, again, that's how you build alignment between your internal and your external reputation. And both are important. Next slide. So this is another slide to screenshot why it's important to do both, right? A unified story for internal and external clients is how you build a magnetic brand, right? Your internal story alignment fuels your consistent external storytelling, right? And when there's a disconnect, people feel it. That's where you get brand confusion. We talked about Amazon. That's where trust erodes. Oh, I don't want to take Uber because they treat their drivers bad. I'll take Lyft. And so you want to erase that disconnect between your internal and your external storytelling. Your external brand is only as strong as your internal culture. Next slide. So my call to action to people when they are looking to implement story selling is start internally. Even if internally is you, that's fine. Some people are solopreneurs. That's how you become a bigger entity, is by starting as a smaller entity. But I would give all of you a call to action. Start now. Start collecting and cataloging your company's stories, right? Go through your customer testimonials. And if you don't have them, get some. If you don't have a Google My Business account, get one and start doing those testimonials. Catalog those. Collect those. Encourage your team members to share a story that shows your values in action. And believe me, they want to. People will step on their mother for a $5 Starbucks card. You can incentivize them to bring me your story. Everyone who enters a story gets a coffee. They get a this, they get a that. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. So your stories are your strategic advantage. We talked about that at the beginning. Your stories help you be AI proof. Your stories help you be recession proof. Your stories help your clients not want to work with anybody else besides you. So my call to action on story selling is to start now. Next slide. So I'm going to open for questions, but before I do that, I want to let all of you know, first of all, thank you, my hosts. And if you could keep that slide big so that people could scan the QR code, and I should have put the actual link for anyone with accessibility issues, but there are bonus materials. I made a page for everyone at SWOT in Order. And I gave you the full Starbucks origin story, their why case study, and how their purpose became their profit. So I wrote the whole thing out for you if that's of interest to you. I also did a sample story selling SWOT framework for internal versus external, so that you could see what they looked like specifically, with prompts and questions to answer. And the last thing I did was the do's and don'ts of a good business story. I gave you 18 do's and 18 don'ts so that you can see them in a side-by-side table and tell a great business story yourself. So remember, your expertise will get you noticed, but your stories are going to make you unforgettable. So thank you.
Wow. I'm starting. I'm going to be selfish.
That's
Raise your hand if
okay.
you want
And
to.
Adrian, if you could make that slide just a little bit bigger so that the
There we
people
go.
who need to scan the QR code on their phone can get to it.
Awesome. Awesome. That was so good. So good. Do you have do you see the comments? Can you add a comment and with your URL, your LinkedIn, and your
I
email?
will
Jen?
do that when I go into Chatter. I was told not to be in Chatter.
Oh,
While I was on
no.
the
I mean on
call.
StreamYard. On
Just
StreamYard. Do you have comments on StreamYard, Deb? I can't tell.
Let's see here. I don't believe that I
no,
do.
there's
Okay.
no comments, and I just want to say the QR code is not working for me.
Oh, it's not. Okay, here, I'm going to go ahead and get it and put it into the chat. It worked for me. I tested it, but if it doesn't work for you, like, that's not good. So
Yeah, no,
let
I'm
me
having a
go
little
ahead
hard.
and
Yeah,
get
wait.
that. And, I have just enough ADD to be dangerous, so I can take questions while I get you this website.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Debbie, don't laugh when I ask this question. I'm going to get off the stream because the QR code, Debbie, is 100% right. That is why Debbie is so good at what she does with her technology. She knows to check everything. Debbie, do you remember Winn-Dixie and when we're getting better every day? And I was like, Jennifer, I'm like, who does that? Why would you have such a silly slogan? And then I would walk into Winn-Dixie and just in a very serious face while they're checking me out, I would look at the cashier and I would say, is today the day? And they would say, what do you mean is today the day? And I said, is today the day you got better? Are you getting better today? Or is it going to be tomorrow? I thought, what the silliest can you do? But then even with Pizza Hut, so what is happening behind the scenes, and we'll also talk about Cracker Barrel, that they make these decisions or these taglines that are part of their story, but they're not only disconnected, they make the consumer question, like, why am I even here?
They make them question their entire credibility. All the people that loved going into the Cracker Barrel stores and sitting in their rocking chairs went, ooh, oh, hey. And where I think that comes from personally is those are companies that stopped paying attention to their internal clients. they stopped asking their employees for that feedback. And, whether they would take the time to do an internal versus an external SWOT, I would question now, possibly not. And I just put the, Debbie, did you see the link that I gave you for the QR code that worked for me, but is not working for you?
Or me.
So
Sorry.
it's Storyselling, the number 4, success.com. So storysellingforsuccess.com /SWOT -order -bonuses.
I love it. I love it. We'll make sure we get that all out.
Adrian, on the chatter side, you also have a question for Jen from
Oh,
Blue.
thank you so much. That is River Jen, and she is an amazing, amazing woman.
Hi,
Thank you.
River.
I see Nuala. Nuala, meet Jen. Jen, meet Nuala. Nuala's got a question. Take it away, Nuala.
Hi, it's not so much a question. I'm just blown away by your presentation. I think this is an extremely powerful and innovative way of using a traditional SWOT analysis
Thank
and to
you.
change it into how you can tell your story and different stories and tell stories in different ways according to which letter of the SWOT you're addressing. So this has been fabulous, and I'll certainly be using this. Tremendous.
Oh, I'm so glad. I think it'll really change how everyone internally and externally sees your business.
Nuala, thank you. All right, I have another question. Why are these, I'm going to mention 2 places of why they don't tell their story more, like Petco. You can buy a bag of dog food or cat food, try it, go home, I eat it. I'm like, no, I don't like that dog food, and I can return it back.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I let the dog try it. But like, that's amazing. Or
That is amazing.
we have and we have so we have a channel called Debate the News, which I absolutely love. And Jonathan Big was sharing with us how you could go to Trader Joe's and ask, like, I would like to try that, and they will open it up and try. But yet, those are 2 big, juicy ways to run their business, and yet there's no story around that. And so that I'm curious.
And I agree. And the last several times I've been into my local Trader Joe's, I thought, wow, I moved from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I guess they don't do the cool sample table here, because that was how you would know, oh, hey, I really like those strawberry mochi, or, oh, hey, I really like that butter chicken, or, hey, I really like that granola. And they would give me coffee. I loved going to Trader Joe's and getting just that extra bit of coffee, and I haven't seen my local one do it, and they should.
Yeah, and I gotta say, so I haven't seen that either. The link is at the top of the room on Chatter, so it's there. I've not ever been to a Trader Joe's where they eat, where they've given samples. However, I've been to like BJ's, Costco's, the Sam's Club. They all do that, the sampling thing. But I love that. But originally, where I'm from in New York, they have this store called Stu Leonard's, and it has, when you first walk in, it has all the rules of the store, and it starts out with the customer is always right, and it ends with the customer is always, like, go back to number 1.
100%.
Well, I got to tell you that my friend used to work there, and one year I'll never forget this. Somebody actually it was Thanksgiving, and right after Thanksgiving, they came in and they brought just the bones of the turkey to return it, because they said it was the worst turkey that they ever had in their life. But yet it was just the bones. But do you know that the store did not question them? They just took that bones of turkey back. And to me, like, that's above and beyond when it comes to customer
That
service.
is living your values right there.
Yes, exactly.
That is absolutely a strength story.
Yep.
So,
Adrian,
you could ask a Trader Joe employee for a sample of almost anything to eat in the store.
Yes.
So that may be why they're not, but that's the thing. That's what I meant to say. Not like other stores that, you make walk in and that day is sampling day. The fact that you could walk into a Trader Joe's and go, I don't know if I'm going to like that wine, or I don't know if I'm going to like that ravioli.
Absolutely.
And they will have to open it and sample it. And yet that's what I mean. They're not telling a story about that. Is it like a secret menu? or even secret menus. I don't see a lot of stories around that. Like, I'm just trying to understand how
I
these
know
companies
In and
they seem
Out
to be
has a
missing.
total secret menu, and it's nobody talks about Fight Club, right? You got to really work to go find the secret menu. But I exist to go ferret out those stories. Like, it just lights me on fire. I get all excited. Let's do that. Let's write that. Let's make an editorial calendar around that. Woo, right? So I get really excited about the stories. And maybe it's just because I like people, right? I think a lot of writers do really. We have endless curiosity about people. But I think that there are so many untold stories. Like I said, here we are 7 years later, and the $948,000 story that was never told still gets my goat.
Sorry, I'm asking my husband to toast my Pop-Tart because I'm
That's
hungry,
that.
and he
Well,
gave it to me.
I'm
He
just
brings
so
it to me
jelly
raw.
that you can have Pop-Tarts. I have a gluten allergy. I miss Pop-Tarts.
Oh, I am lucky.
So
I don't know.
are there
And then,
any
okay, so
more questions? Did
any more
anybody come
questions?
up
Because
with anything else that they want to ask about, talk about? When you go to get the bonuses, I put a form at the bottom of the page. I don't believe in holding bonuses hostage. They are my gift to you. So you can go there, get the bonuses, and never talk to me again, because I absolutely despise when people say, oh, I've got this great thing. You really want it. And I think, yeah, I really do want it. And then I get there and I have to join their mailing list. I'm like, Urgh. So I don't do that. We do not hold your bonuses hostage. They are yours as a gift.
which actually, it's interesting. That's something you don't hear about too, is companies that offer like a bonus, whether it's money or vacation, whatever that is. I do find that a lot of companies, even going through, and I'm going to say to Debbie, right? How many times do you look at a website and you're like, where's your about? Isn't the about section your story? And why do you not have it? Or why on LinkedIn, which Jen, put your PDF that you did on LinkedIn. If you need help, I'll show you where to put it. But
Oh,
it's
you want me to
wonderful.
post
Might as
it?
well have it.
Okay.
Yeah, let it last. You put in your favorites and add it as a
Sure.
PDF. It'll be beautiful
I'll
up
just
there.
put it right up there in my
Do you
feature.
notice? I just don't understand, because I'm like, people want to know who's behind the owner. They want to know who's behind an artist. So why are people missing that piece of it? They're about sex.
I'm not entirely sure why. Like, I had someone say, why accountants? Why do you get so excited about accountants, right? Like, people see them as being the next thing to the auditors at the IRS, right? Which is not even remotely the case. But the real reason why I love accountants is I had quit my job because I'm like, if I can't birth babies, right? I thought there were going to be no babies for me. I'm going to birth books. And so I quit a very high stress job, which of course meant I got the baby. And it was one of those pregnancies where we hope everyone's going to live. And those accountants hired me pregnant. They let me work 3 months and then take 4 months of maternity leave. They asked for my baby pictures. They embraced my new young family. I would have thrown myself in traffic for these accountants. They were the most quietly kind, generous people, and that is, to me, that's what makes accountants superheroes. They care. They are of service. And I very much believe in being of service. I can't hear you, Adrienne, but I know it was something good.
Sorry, I got a phone call and then it messed my chatter up. I love this. I did have, share with us. We have a few minutes. Share with us Wired for Story that Lisa wrote, like a little synopsis of what we would expect in that book.
Lisa Cron talks about, and she actually does business talks. If you go on YouTube and look for some of her business talks, her last name is spelled Cron, and I have met her and she's a delightful woman. And Lisa Cron, she wrote several books, but her first one was Wired for Story. And Jonathan, of the cool blingy hat that I miss, raised his hand and said that he had read it. But I really believe that her books are applicable to businesses as well, because she talks about, stories are how we learn. Stories are, what reach into our emotional centers and make us buy. They actually leave imprints on our emotional set and on our lizard brain. I mean, that was fascinating research to me, that facts are going to light up 3 areas of the brain, none of them touching. And stories are going to light up 7 to 9 plus. They haven't even found all the areas it lights up yet. They are going to light up to 9 plus areas of your brain. And a lot of those areas are interconnected from the front to the back. So it's getting to your limbic system. It's getting to your amygdala, that lizard brain. It's getting to your frontal cortex. It's hitting your emotional center. And so stories are the things that we remember. And maybe it's just because I'm a writer, but when I read an amazing book, I could tell you where I was and what I was doing that day when I read the book. And all writers tell me this, right? Because I also, for the last 15 years, have been the guiding force behind Writers in the Storm blog, which is WRITERS, in the Storm blog.
Oh,
And
wow.
we help thousands of writers weekly. We come out 3 times a week talking about story, why it's important. I have an article coming out on Friday there about how stories are going to save humanity. And I really do believe that, because humans want connection. If we learn nothing else in the pandemic, we learn that we need connection. And part of how humans connect is story.